Hello, Darklings! So today I have kind of an odd and sort of somber video, which is about death and mourning. And this is kind of a big part of the cornerstone of the Gothic subculture as we know it today. Came from a lot of these Gothic traditions, namely out of the 19th century. The Victorians were fascinated with death in this kind of almost perverse way. Some of it's a little skeezy, like the eating mummy dust thing is totally revolting. But ancient Egyptian burial practices are fascinating in and of themselves. But then the Victorians had to ruin it by being weird. But, I mean, they took the whole mourning garb thing very seriously, like certain amounts of time they must wear black mourning garb, and then they would do hair jewelry of the deceased. They would do graveyard picnics as a rather regular occurrence with their dead loved ones. They would do post-mortem photography. This is a very pretty coffee table book of that. It's called Beyond the Dark Veil, Post-Mortem and Mourning Photography. So this is a cool one I found used. It's kind of weird, the things that people will do when someone has died. Old funeral home practices may include stopping clocks and opening windows for the soul to depart, covering mirrors so it doesn't get trapped. And all these little bits of superstition that surround a dead body, because there is just this cognizant recognition that this is no longer a person in the same way that it was. I mean, other examples of superstitions, the origins of popular superstitions and customs from T. Sherper Knowlson is another older thrift find. Some of these do in fact have to do with death. And then we have our concept of where vampires came from. This is another really good one. Vampires, Burial, and Death, Folklore, and Reality, which talks about how in Slavic tradition and areas around Turkey, and then farther west into Transylvania, we get this whole vampire myth, and it does include some specific cases of famous vampires from a factual perspective. And then Death Around the World, Strange Rites and Weird Customs by Margaret and Eve Ronan. This is a rather interesting one about different funerary practices too. Most of these books are older. And might have some things in them that are a little bit less PC because they're very dated. But anyway, there's all kinds of things that people do when someone dies that are kind of strange. And this romanticism of death and spiritualism and occultism and stuff, that's a very Victorian themed idea that then seeped into the Gothic subculture. But typically when I think about death, I don't know how to mourn very well. I haven't had too many people close to me die, and I've only ever attended one funeral when I was 6, and it doesn't exactly ring that much in my head because at the time I didn't fully comprehend my grandfather's death. But it's kind of strange. Usually when I think of the best way to describe that very particular chord that gets struck when it comes to death is I really hope I have a lot of Buffy watchers watch my videos, because I'm a devout Buffy fan. In, I believe, season 5, when one of the main characters dies, one of the other characters, Anya, kind of puts the nail on the head on why we get so frustrated that this body that was a person is not really that person anymore. And her complete lack of understanding of why Joyce wasn't there anymore was... It really, every time I watch it, it makes me cry. So I try and make sure I don't watch that when I know I'm going somewhere afterwards, because it probably ruins my makeup. But humans aren't the only creatures that mourn. Crows and other corvids have been known to mourn for their dead. So have other apes and dolphins and various other warm-blooded creatures have been known to mourn their dead. And in the case of, I know corvids especially, they've been known to go and visit the resting place of a dead bird for generations, even when they no longer know the bird, technically. Like, that kind of behavior has been observed. It's crazy. But the main reason why I kind of thought about this video and why it was kind of hard to do is a friend of mine did die last week, and her name is Cinnamon. And she's one of those people that is so, so sweet that you can't believe that they're a real person. I mean, she was just the sweetest person, and so cool and so honest and very, very funny in her own little way. And I don't think that she realized exactly how funny it was that she cared about her plants like they were children. And then she alphabetized all of her spices in her witch cabinet, and she collected chintz and pink and all this Victorian furniture, and she took care of her little chihuahuas like their babies. And it's very hard to know she's not there doing that anymore. And she was sick and dying of cancer, and it is so strange that I first heard of her for being the influence for the character of Death in the Sandman comics. And then I realized she lived here, and then I got to know her and realized that she is such a sweet person. And I'm tearing up a little bit. But it's just so strange to think that this beautiful, lively person is no longer there. And so mourning is a weird thing to me, because there's too many emotions to the point it makes a strange kind of vacuum. And until I sit there and know that she's not there, I don't recognize that she's not there. And maybe that's because I don't know how to mourn, or maybe that's just the way that I mourn and don't fully recognize it. But all these behaviors are very weird. Anyway, I don't like getting personal, but it is still kind of hard when stuff like that happens, and I figured I'd toss in the other gibberish because I make generally Gothic themed videos. So, if you have stories, feel free to share them. But I figured I would get out some of this. Anyway, till next time, Darklings.